Hi, my name is Bill Denby. I'm from Texas. I'm the VP of Product Marketing at Tecsys, and I'm excited to introduce you to a panel discussion about continuous improvement in your warehouse operations. Now, everybody, but especially distributors these days, are on tight budgets. Workforces are strained, and often they don't know where to start when building or rebuilding their warehouse operations. At the same time, the decisions made early can make or break how your warehouse platform and your business grows. So today we're going to talk about how to identify what you need to prepare your warehouse for building in continuous improvement, distinguish the ways of build a philosophy of continuous improvement in your warehouse, and discuss how continuous improvement in the warehouse can impact your organization as a whole. We've got three panelists today. Keith Brereton, he is the Director of Client Solutions at Tecsys. We have Nick Levatis, who is Managing Partner at Avalon, and Jonah Reinhardt, who's the IT Administrator for Warehouse Management at Werner Electric. Guys, could you like to do a quick intro? Keith, you want to start?
Absolutely. I have been working in and around warehouses for a number of years now, probably just under a decade, and been working in this industry now with Eclipse specifically for a number of years. I do work with Tecsys as an organization, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Thank you. Nick, tell us about yourself.
Nick Levatis, I'm Managing Partner for Supply Chain Strategy at Avalon CSC. Primarily, my role is to help assist customers in making some of the larger investment decisions when it comes down to automation, network strategy, and assist them into their supply chain discipline or evolution throughout the years to come. Thank you.
Excellent. And Jonah, let's hear what you're all about.
Yeah, so Jonah Reinhardt with Werner Electric. I've been with Werner for about 4 years, primarily focused on warehouse management system that we get through Tecsys, but actually just recently changed to a new role as the team lead for our business system. So kind of taking the approach of what we've done to improve our warehouse back to Eclipse and to the ERP and all the various functions therein.
Interesting. Okay, guys, let's get into it. So a lot of people hear the phrase continuous improvement, and sometimes it's a bit ambiguous, sometimes it's a bit nebulous. So what is continuous improvement in the warehouse? What does it mean? Let's start out with that question. Keith, can you give us a quick rundown from your perspective on what continuous improvement, the whole philosophy and approach behind continuous improvement in the warehouse is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. We do hear it all the time, and Bill, as you were just mentioning, this is a term we've used across industries, and we've all heard it before. Strive to get better. We hear that as people. We hear that as managers, as employees. We get reviews every couple of months, every year, and we're told do better, right? Do improve upon yourself. As a software company, that we strive to listen to our customers, and we strive to hear what they have to say so that we can continuously make our product better. And then as a distributor, there are a lot of forces working against you getting better and working to that you need to overcome in order to serve your customers to the best of your ability. And oftentimes, and as I mentioned, I've worked with warehouse operations now for about 10 years. Sometimes I've seen set and forget warehouses, right, where they set up a distribution network. There's a lot of consulting effort that goes into setting up the original warehouse implementation. And then after that, maybe it's a fatigue, maybe people are tired of change, but there's just no improvement that's made. No effort is made beyond the initial implementation. This is obviously something that I would encourage. The world is changing. There's a lot of forces at play. I've already mentioned a couple of them, but we've got, the Amazon effect, which I'm sure you've heard discussions on for the past 5, maybe 10 years. The labor force is something we've heard about in the last couple of years, where it's very difficult to hire people, just really across industries, across, different countries. It's, labor is a problem. Technology is continually evolving, and we need to continually improve. So to answer the question of what is continuous improvement within the warehouse, It starts with a culture of respect, innovation, and adaptability. You need to recognize that there is a need to change, that there is, those forces that exist outside of your business, outside of your world, but that have a direct impact on your employees, on your management, and on the success of your business. As you begin to, I guess, move down on the path towards solving problems, you end up having to break down a problem, break it down to its smallest part, and then solve the problem using people, process, or technology. Maybe that was a bit long-winded, but hopefully that starts us down the path of answering what is continuous improvement in the warehouse.
No, I think that was a great summary. I mean, in this world of continuously trying to innovate for your customers and continuously trying to improve your own services to be able to get that march, get that jump on your competitor, continuous improvement has to become a philosophy, I think. And I think that's a great way of saying it. Okay, Jonah, over to you. How do you set up? How do you achieve that continuous improvement approach? How do you set up your organization to be able to achieve this?
Yeah, so I think Keith kind of alluded to it a little bit that change is inevitable, and even if you take the approach of the set it and forget it warehouse, everything around you is still going to continue to change, and you're going to get kind of left behind in the fallout, basically. I was fairly lucky when I joined Werner that they already had a pretty strong mindset towards continuous improvement. So it's nice and easy to piggyback off of that paradigm mind shift when it already exists. But if you're not in that mindset now, that's obviously the bigger question, right? How do you get to that point? So just kind of going off of some of the things that I guess here at Werner that we've done is really it's about empowerment. It's about enabling every single from teammate to your sales force. How do we make this change? How do we improve and constantly look around the corner and kind of get away from that, well, this is the way we've always done it mentality? And some of the things that we've done at Werner is it's simple stuff. You look back at it and you're like, why didn't we think of that? Setting up areas in the warehouse where a teammate can just fill out a little note card, just a 3x5 note card that says, hey, I ran into this issue today and I think we could improve it by doing this. Set up a place where they can kind of start feeding those ideas and set up a process, obviously, to evaluate. You can't accomplish every single little thing that comes across your list here, but it gives you the opportunity to start having that dialogue with everyone and getting that empowerment to them. And it goes beyond just the warehouse. It goes to even our sales force. We struggled a little bit with our sales force, and even on the purchasing buying end, getting that idea of continuous improvement. How can we help the warehouse, and how can we help our customers even, and kind of changing that mindset even within Salesforce. Go to your customer site, and yeah, you're there to sell them a product at the end of the day, but maybe through a partnership we can evaluate some of the processes that they're doing. Maybe we can change something to help them out. It builds that relationship. Same thing with your vendors, to be able to build those relationships, that it's no longer just a buy and sell type of relationship. It's really, we want to build this partnership with you and grow it.
I think, Joni, you said it, and I think I'd like to pass this on to either Keith or Nick. Is when I've actually had the good fortune of going to Werner and chatting with the guys there, and the thing that I came away with, these guys listen to their customer. They actually encourage their conversation with their customer. What do you need today? What do you need tomorrow? What do you think of that kind of approach where achieving continuous improvement is all about getting in front of your customer when it comes to really understanding his needs, his business, and just basically pushing yourself to continuously provide an improved service to him?
Yeah, I mean, if I can just touch on that, Bill. The word that Jonah used was empowering people, right? And if you go to your customer base and have discussions with them and nothing changes, they're not going to feel empowered. They're going to feel frustrated. But if you are having conversations, and they don't have to be very, big commitments that you're making, but if you're having conversations and people see change happening, they're now valuable conversations, and valuable continuous improvement is occurring. And that's what customers are going to be wanting to see. That's what they're going to be wanting to hear, is that conversation with the salesperson who is trying to sell them something is somebody that's also listening. And so it's, great companies are able to do that and do that well. Listen, create those partnerships, and then drive success, not just for their own bottom line, but also to the bottom line of their customers.
Just want to. No, go ahead.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Keith said. Is absolutely, it doesn't need to be this big, overblown, large project. It doesn't need to be a mountain. Just take it little by little. I mean, one prime example that we experienced here at Werner is we found that, and this was actually a note card suggestion, as a matter of fact. It was our pickers that said, you know what, I'm constantly, when I'm done with my picks, I have to stage this container to our packing location, which for us in our environment happens to be just the number one, because that was a previous continuous improvement idea of, rather than trying to stage it to a packing location and typing in, 6-7 letters for packing, let's just make it one number. It's easy to push the number one on the keypad of your RF device. Well, we took it one step further with an additional idea of, why not just have a barcode that the picker can actually scan? So then they don't even have to pick up their wrist and look at a device, or pick up the RF gun or whatever. They're already used to scanning everything anyway. So let's just give them one more barcode that they can scan. So it's just a simple, you look at it as a trivial change, but it's over the course of the day with 50, 60 pickers doing hundreds and hundreds of transactions in a day, it adds up to a monumental amount of productivity gains.
Yep.
Just want to add to that now more and more, some of the questions that I ask to customers, primarily in the Eclipse user community, is if you're available to promise to your customers or next day delivery, if you want to create a competitive advantage by, say, you'll deliver it an hour faster than your competitor, how does that affect your supply chain? And we're seeing, because of traffic, especially in North America, to get to a customer site, sometimes traffic is horrendous with, and they get back up for miles ongoing. That 1 hour difference, how does that affect my supply chain operation at the branch level, at the customer service? So we asked them is, if we're going to do that, are we properly slotted? Can we use automation? How does that affect procurement buys, staffing levels, receiving, put away, and shipping? And there's a lot of low-hanging fruits that are available out there, and it's just a matter that companies understand that it is a journey, that the big bang approach to try to solve everything all at once is not necessarily the right approach, but there are pieces that you could take on that are much more manageable and contained in terms of risk and costing.
Okay, before we get digging deeper into the actual places to go look and how you breed this, I want to encourage everybody who's attending the webinar, if you have questions, put them in the chat. They'll come up on my screen here, and we'll pass them to the panelists at the end. So don't hesitate, just fire them on the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to get to all your questions. So Nick, you mentioned some key areas in your warehouse that would be good places to look at starting that kind of step-by-step continuous improvement journey. You mentioned slotting and I think I heard you say automation, picking locations, all that kind of stuff. Can you give us some specific kind of areas where, if you're going to send someone on their journey, where would you be a good place to go start looking?
The first question we always said, do you have all the metric data on your products, or at least your small SKUs? It's a typical client of ours has about 20 to 22,000 SKUs, especially Eclipse-based type of customers, a lot of small picks. And it's identifying those that are fast movers, that contain good margins behind them. If they don't have all the metric data, then and 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, I don't. Obviously, throughout the years, we have developed a catalog through, on volumetric data and products, especially around HVAC, plumbing, and electrical industries. But it's also to work with your suppliers and providing you with some baseline volumetric data for us to use. The second part is a lot of times a warehouse, it might seem filled, but it isn't full. And that's just at the naked eye, that we only have a visual of what's in front of us and not necessarily utilizing the airspace above us. So slotting, it is an exercise that could be done in a short period of time to maximize the square footage of your warehouse, not just necessarily floor space, but also airspace. And airspace is where you gain the most amount of value or positioning for your SKUs. The third aspect is, and we're hearing a lot more of it, it is automation. Is automation in the cart for us as an organization? Does it make sense? Well, what Amazon has is an automation. It does not necessarily, entice that it will work for you. There are multiple solutions of automation out there, and there's multiple levels in terms of investment. It is to determine with your data, your standard operating procedures, how you do your inventory turns, your procurement, and the type of customers that you are servicing. That's where we're going to be able to determine what is the best level set automation and making sure that we maximize an ROI that's less than 5 years. The other component is if automation does get selected, then how do we enable technology? And from that perspective, we have a WCS, a WMS, a TMS that could all play into Link. And if you add e-commerce into it, it's you're able to create seamless transactions. However, it is a journey, it is a discipline, and it's not something that gets done over time. So.
Yeah, there's a lot there, a lot to it, a lot of options. I think the interesting thing is really understanding your problems. I mean, that, you said it, Nick, that get your data, understand where the issues are, and then sort of work on those. Werner, I heard that Werner is now at a point where your accuracy is something in the 99.9 accuracy rate and basically zero backlog in your warehouse, using this continuous improvement approach, Jonah. So tell us how you went through that journey, or what you guys did to get to that point of that level of accuracy and that level of no backlog whatsoever.
Yeah, I think Nick kind of started to hit on it. Those services that you can offer to your customer that kind of distinguish you and set you apart are really what bring your customer back. It's not just the can I buy it from you? It's what can you do in addition to just me buying that part or that consumable from you. One of the areas that Werner definitely identified as an area for a strong improvement, in addition to the slotting and the other things that Nick mentioned, is our wire cut area. Being in an electrical distributor, that's something that our customers really kind of demand. They want, if they want 500 feet of wire, they want 500 feet of wire. They don't want 498 feet of wire. It's really critical that they have exactly what they're asking for. So we kind of went through some iterations of this, from just identifying the problem that, hey, sometimes when we cut wire, it's not exactly what was requested. So you tend to err on the side of caution, and the customer ends up with 502 feet of wire just to be on the safe side. But at the end of the day, it affects bottom line, because you give 2 feet to every single customer on every single pick, and next thing you know, you can't fulfill the needs anymore because the customer wants something and you just don't have the product anymore. So it kind of started with an approach that said, okay, well, let's start tracking this information. And it was as simple as just putting together an Excel file that said, okay, here's all the available wire that we have in our warehouse, and these are, how much we have of each individual wire on a spool. And from there, it just kind of continued to progress, and it got more and more automated, using better, newer, different technologies, making it a little more seamless, to the point that with a solution that Tecsys helped us kind of build together, it gave us the opportunity to really hone in on that one specific area and really improve, our pick accuracy with our wire. That our customers know that if they ask something of us, they can rely on us, that we're going to be able to not only deliver an accurate product to them, but a consistent product to them and within the timeframes that they're requesting. It drove one part of our warehouse, that wire picking area. We went from being able to do 150 cuts a night to now our picking team, which is only about 10 people, they can do 500 cuts in a single night, which when we talk to industry, other people in our industry, they're just blown away by that number. The amount of the volume as well as just the accuracy of being able to do that is just astonishing to most people. That's just one area that we really kind of focused on improving accuracy and the productivity of it. But our philosophy has kind of always been that we, if a customer orders it today, we want to be able to deliver it to them tomorrow. So just continuous little tweaks and ideas, just kind of eventually you get to this point that you're seeing the top of the mountain and you're going down the backside of it. So
I think it's hilarious, Jonah, that almost every starting point of these in a warehouse starts off in Excel. That's something we've seen, But and I encourage Keith and Nick to jump in here. If you took someone into your warehouse today and said, "Yeah, we're doing 500 cuts a night over there," they're just going to be totally blown away and like, "Oh, we could never do that." But if you took them in there and said, "We used to do 150 and now we're doing 175," they're like, "Well, maybe I could do that." And I think that's one of the things that's important, is understanding the continuous improvement is going from 150 to 175 and then 175 to 200 and so on and so on. It's not going straight from 150 to 500. I think that is a critical thing to remember in that journey of continuous improvement. It is truly a journey.
But one thing just to mention here, Jonah, you touched on this. I don't know if you want to talk any more about it, but your journey of getting continuous improvement and getting to where you guys are today does have a lot to do with listening to your employees and empowering them. You mentioned those note cards. It sounded like you've placed them in multiple places throughout your warehouse and probably provided them out to supervisors and asked them to collect those notes. I guess it's extremely important that this is, that the resources that are on the floor in the warehouse, some of the folks there, management sometimes rotates in, rotates out, but you might have somebody that's been working in your warehouse for 35 years and can stumble around, with their eyes closed and pick things. So those are tremendous resources to not just forget about, not just say, well, he's 2 or 3 years from retirement. Let's try to get some of that massive knowledge and help empower those folks to drive improvement in the warehouse. But Jonah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, on those note cards.
Yeah, definitely. It's a process and procedures, that you get to the point where it's like, it's just everyday normal life. But yeah, there's definitely a process behind it. So something that our operations teams do is a daily stand-up. So each individual functional team of the warehouse, no matter what area they might be working in, they get together at the beginning of their shift, shortly thereafter, and they talk about, this is what our day looks like. This is what we're facing that we know right now. This is what we did yesterday and the problems or the issues we faced yesterday. And those note cards are actually right there at those daily stand-ups. We have a board with metrics that kind of shows, this is lines per hour or whatever the metrics are that they're looking at, which I think is kind of an important point to note, that, you kind of need those metrics, even if they're not great. Everyone's got to start somewhere, but having those metrics actually gives you something that you can start building upon and start looking at. So to Bill's point, it's not going from 150 cuts to 500 cuts. It doesn't happen overnight. It's that slow progression, but as long as you see that progression moving in the direction that you're looking for, that's the ideal part. So getting that communication, breaking down some of those walls is really an important part of the process.
So Nick, I'm sure you go to lots of warehouses. You see a lot of daily stand-ups in the warehouses you go to?
We our sales pitch is, the way we advocate is, we're shop floor people first. We love to walk the floor. the source of all of our information or pain points or opportunities and challenges come from individuals that work the floor, not from a boardroom or an executive office. The action happens in the back, and these are the people, when you are going through a journey of continuous improvement or full-blown transformation these days. These are the ones that are these individuals working in the shop floor are the ones that are going to make you successful, and they're the ones that are going to advocate for change and also for continuous improvement. That if you have invested, example, in automation, it's not to say when you turn on the lights from day one, automation, you're still going to have to fine tune it. Yeah. And the only way to determine what is the best way to fine tune it to get it optimal is you know, it could be, to Jonah's point, it could be a place card, commentary box, or going to visit the floor on a regular basis and talk to the operators that are living with it, not only on one shift, but depending on the number of shifts, it is key that you visit it at different points of business hours and at different peaks of the business in terms of seasonality.
So Keith, I mean, you go to a lot of organizations in your time of representing Tecsys in this distribution space, and I'm sure you see lots of kind of cultures, organizational cultures, and different things that you see in an organization. We're hearing from the panel here today that it really is all about how you set up your organization and the culture that you drive there. Any key triggers, anything that you see in an organization that really brings out that kind of, now these guys are ready for that continuous improvement journey when it comes to culture?
Yeah, I mean, the cultures that I have seen, and there is a very wide range that I have visited. But if there's a culture of respect for the employees, that goes a long way to allow your employees to feel comfortable to share, to feel comfortable to provide the rationale behind why they think that the way the manager is doing something is not the correct way of doing it. You know, I'm not talking about insubordination, right? You want your employees to have their chance, to have their say, but you know, we don't always then turn around and do what they ask. But you know, there's a lot of different stories that I have of this. You know, there's customers I've worked with in the past where there is just so much paperwork that's being placed in front of the management team. You know, scheduling, hiring, trying to figure out where some lost item that's really important to one of their customers is. So they're looking at security videos. So they're doing everything all day long except managing their team, right? And so their team doesn't have a good connection with them. So as Nick was saying, I go out, I talk to them on the floor, I learn what the problem is, and go back and mention it to the manager. The manager didn't necessarily need me. They could have done this themselves, but they're overwhelmed with the amount of extra activities that have nothing to do with warehousing that they're having to do. So there's the problem then is there's a lack of connect between management and the employees, and so then they're scared to provide their feedback. So there's one customer I visited where, you know, locations were getting replenished 10, 12 times in a day. That's obviously not good. We should never have that situation come up. Now, they'd mentioned that to management. Management told them, don't be lazy, go get it done, right? Now, meanwhile, the employee is trying to provide feedback to management to say there's a problem here that needs to be resolved. They're not saying they don't want to do the work. They're saying there's a problem that needs to be resolved. So there's a tremendous amount of gain that can be provided simply by, you know, conversing in a respectful way with the employees that work for you. You know, and then by listening to their concerns, listening and providing that change. You know, I mentioned that earlier in the discussion already, but if you make small changes for your employees, they now are empowered and they recognize that change will happen when they provide feedback. There's a company I worked with whose average age force was over 55. The average age of their workforce was over 55, and so their number one concern was that the text was not large enough on the handheld devices. Well, the work required to make that change was minutes. However, the management team had been continuously telling their employees, just bring your glasses to work. Please just wear your glasses. And so they told them that for months. And after a short visit, short discussion, we ended up concluding that it's only a couple of minutes of work to make the text bigger. Well, the grins and the morale boost that we had from the whole team was huge, was massive. And everybody was working faster. You weren't having people slow down, pull out their glasses, put them on, read the handheld. I mean, the productivity gain was enormous from a very, very small change that just took a little bit of respect and a little bit of listening. So that's the biggest thing that needs to be accomplished. The biggest culture change is recognizing that these folks that you're hiring and that you're working with are not necessarily just employees that are supposed to go and pick product, but they are also resources who you can empower, to become the greatest change makers in your business.
It's a great point. Thank you, Keith. That was really good. All right, Nick. So we're all sweetness and light, we're culture and all that kind of thing. But the bottom line comes, there is a bottom line. We have to get some ROI here. We have to get some real financial improvements. And I imagine you go into many of these organizations, and that's kind of what's going to be driving some of these projects. So what's the ROI that you would see on an organization when you're talking about implementing some of these processes we've discussed, or some of these improvements? How do you first of all predict, and how do you measure ROI based upon these small incremental changes? I imagine it's very difficult.
It is. It is there's not one size, not one shoe that fits everybody. It is a science behind it. We take into account the capex behind the initial investment, the labor, status quo versus where we plan to be 18 months from now or 12 months from now. What we also take into account is, for example, if we're going in a much larger scale in terms of continuous improvement, and if we're going down the route of automation, for example, then we compare it to the cost of building a mezzanine. So we are able to get some ROI behind that. And most importantly is the growth factor. With the changes that I've been making, if I increase productivity, technically I'm increasing my revenue streams. And if I'm increasing my revenue, hence I haven't necessarily increased my operational framework, and I'm able to do and deliver more with with less. And so the throughput that we're able to produce over a couple of years, if we do things properly, then I've seen in cases from 100 million to 200 million over 5 years with the same workforce almost. And those, however, the customer stuck to the plan. It wasn't easy, and there was mistakes done along the road. And mistakes need to happen because those are learning experiences for everybody. But it's I'm able to do a lot more with the same baseline that I had before. And on top of it, if acquisitions come into play, it does add an extra layer of stress from a DC or procurement perspective. But if it gets done well, it does not necessarily mean that we got to go get extra square footage for a distribution center. It is, how do we make it a little more efficient, and maybe utilizing certain concepts of cross-docking, example. How do I make that more efficient, and how do I utilize technology to make it efficient and putting together the right processes? So there's many. It's not a simple formula, but it's not to say it's impossible. From an ROI perspective, we're always looking anything over 5 years. We don't really take that into account or even really present it. We try to keep things in between 3 to 5. just because it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen after 5 years.
So Jonah, I mean, I know that there's doing more with the same amount of warehousing and people there. In there's that basically the statement around Werner Electric, because you've grown and grown and grown. Anything you've got insights you've got around measuring ROI or that kind of thing in your organization?
I would say that, we don't necessarily measure strictly on a dollar amount as far as an ROI. There's obviously more to that ROI calculation than just that. Typically, we tend to focus a lot on, the process improvement part of it. How much time can we save? And not to say that, I think you got to tread lightly with this, because you don't necessarily want to make it a negative connotation. And I think that's where most people's minds go when you start talking about, we're going to make this change and it's going to reduce the number of hours that it takes for us to do our job. Because right away people start worrying, well, if I make this change, am I going to lose my job, or am I going to work less hours and make less money? Because that's scary for most people. Change is obviously very scary. It's really about changing that mindset and shifting and saying, well, if we can do this and we can save this hours, it's not that we're going to work less hours. It just gives us opportunity to grow. So now we can sell X amount more to our customers, or we can take on new markets, or we can do this and that. Building that level of confidence to our employee base is really kind of an important part of the whole change management and continuous improvement process.
That's great.
Yeah,
All right, guys.
Just if I can jump in on that for a second, Bill. I mean, there's warehouses that I've toured where I look at a process and I see there's 10 or 15 people that have been added to the organization. They added into the warehouse in order to accomplish a task that with a better process flow, they wouldn't even need to do the task. So there's 15 extra people that have been hired. And when you end up digging down to the root of why was that done, it's because potentially, the investment of $15,000 or $20,000 didn't want to happen. So they didn't want to buy a Cubascan, and they didn't want to take the time to then gather all the metrics. So therefore, it leads to problems down the road, which then requires that you hire 10 or 15 more people. The problem is what this then ends up doing, to the workforce. And Jonah, the point is valid, right? We also don't want the employees to end up in a warehouse that gets closed down. So continuous improvement is absolutely essential to continue to drive productivity gains and to improve the bottom line, so that way your warehouse can continue to exist, so that the employees that are there for 20, 25 years can continue to have jobs, right? And certainly there is a negative connotation to the idea of, we've just made your job 20 hours a week lighter, right? That would be bad. But now you can take that person who's probably very experienced and put them into thinking of ways to drive even more competitive advantage into your system, right? Sure. And there's massive turnover and labor problems and shortages throughout the industry. From what I have seen, for the most part, nobody gets let go whenever continuous improvement is done successfully. It's just that somebody decides to switch a job, and you probably don't need to fill the role.
Yeah. All right, guys, we had some great ideas, some great suggestions, lots of talk about how organizations can structure themselves. Let's bring it right down to the lowest level. I'm a warehouse manager. I'm thinking, this sounds really good. I want to start running a continuous improvement program. Each of you, give me one sort of concrete thing that I should be doing tomorrow. When I go into my warehouse tomorrow, what should I be doing? So let's start with you, Keith.
I would, and you probably already have a couple of people in mind for this already, but I would be thinking about the supervisors and team leads and people working the floor that have already been, I'm going to use the word complaining about things, and try to not necessarily focus on the people that have been negative, but who have been providing constructive feedback, and where your response might have been, I don't really have time right now, talk to me next week. I would start thinking about empowering them and start thinking about asking people, are you willing to take an hour a week to sit down and write some of these ideas down and turn them just from feedback into ways that I can make the warehouse better. A great manager has great employees, and a great CEO has great managers that work for them. And if you can start realizing who amongst your employees in the warehouse are honestly destined for greatness, right? That can start to provide some of these great ideas, and that might be a future team lead or future warehouse manager. I would start looking for those people and start pulling them into your team, pulling them into decisions, and empowering them.
Great point, Keith. So Jonah, you've got a wide array of things you've seen at going on at Werner. Any one of them that you'd say this new warehouse, this warehouse manager wants to start this new program of continuous improvement? Where does he start?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of piggyback off of Keith, I think empowering your employees and having them give you suggestions, great idea. I think, another excellent idea, and something that we do here at Werner is some job shadow. It's very easy to get into a mindset, of the day-to-day life. This is what I do at first thing in the morning, and this is what I do throughout my day. And you get too wrapped up in it and too focused on it that sometimes you can't see that there's a better way of doing what you're doing right now, because it is kind of stuck in that rut of this is the way I've always done it. Have supervisors or team leads or whoever your organizational structure looks like, have them job shadow another person that is maybe either a level below them or even a peer within a different functional area. If you have, as an example, say you have an inbound receiving supervisor and an outbound, supervisor, have them job shadow each other. Take the time to actually, make it an effort. Have them look at each other in their process and what are they doing today, and they might find stuff that that person that's doing that job day in and day out may not even realize that, hey, there's a better way to do this.
Fresh set of eyes, absolutely. All right, Nick, let's have the engineer's view of this. What would be the first thing that you'd do if you got to be that warehouse manager?
If I'm pitching internally that I'm looking for investment for technology improvements, the first starting point is volumetric data. The investment into a QB scan, it is minimal. It's less than $25,000 with training. That is the starting point into the continuous improvement cycle from a technology perspective. And then from there, you could do so many things: slotting, automation, WMS, TMS. It all starts with getting the right cube data. Work with your work with your other suppliers. The cost, like I said, the cost of the equipment is and you could even rent them now. They're not that expensive. And this will also give the opportunity of working with a local school or community college to hire untrained professionals or newcomers into the job force to cube data or products. Yeah. And that'll give them the opportunity exposure into a warehouse. And it's a small investment. It's not a lot of time. That's definitely your point of entry from a technology perspective.
So let's just get this straight. You cube out everything in your warehouse, so you understand how big everything is that you're storing, and you understand how much space you have in your warehouse, and you can then start balancing that equation between the size of everything I've got and the space I've got to put it in, kind of thing.
If you're going through a technology change with continuous improvement, it is the starting point, yes.
Right. Well, guys, that has been a fascinating journey through looking at this process of continuous improvement. I thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions from the audience. I'd like to just throw it out, and please feel free, any of you jump in there. The first question is, how do you manage the issues around continuous change in the warehouse? Isn't change management a big issue? Like, how do you ensure where things are constantly moving forwards, you don't end up with just churn? You don't end up with no one knows what's going on. Would anyone like to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think small change is the kind of change that you're looking for, right? We're not looking to do massive changes. And from a I worked on the software side, so Jonah might be the better person to answer. But from what I have seen, the larger the change is, the more difficult it is. You know, if you're changing the look of an icon, and you have a quick meeting and say, hey, does everybody agree that the icon should get bigger and it should change position from here to here? It's not a big deal, right? But if you completely transform a process overnight without small little improvements and then room for feedback, it can be a very challenging endeavor. So if you can break it up into smaller chunks, it makes change management a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think change management is always an issue when you're making these continuous improvements. I think it's important to know, set your metrics. Where are you today? Set your goals. Where do you want to be tomorrow or a month from now? And then it becomes less about what are all the changes that we need to make in order to get there, as much as it just kind of starts to flow naturally, and you make all these little improvements, and eventually you get to this point where you're like, oh, well, that goal was not only met, but we crushed it. It's blown out of the water. As long as you're not making so many changes, and to Keith's point, it's the small changes, that continuously add to each other and compound. When you start making larger and larger changes, now it becomes more of a management aspect from the change management standpoint, that, okay, well, if we make this direction and this direction we find out is the wrong direction, well, now we've got a big process to go back to where we were before, so that we're not taking that downward slope.
That's a great point. The next question we got is, how can technology help with continuous improvement? My warehouse technology makes it very difficult to change. An interesting one.
So certainly flexible technology. Yeah, flexible technology is essential to being able to adapt. If you've got a framework that, let's say, allows a new language or allows you to integrate into the best of breed new automation, that does provide obviously significant advantages. If you happen to find there's a number of I don't know, new immigrants from potentially Syria or Afghanistan or somewhere that don't know English, if you need to change their screen so that it's now written in Arabic or some other language, that can now mean that there's a labor force that's available that you can work with, and nobody's confused. They're doing the right thing. It's very easy to work with. So it's just one very small example that can, solve a lot of labor problems for you. So flexible technology is essential to being able to meet needs that you're not aware of until they hit you.
So we're seeing there's these more flexible solutions in the warehouse increasing, but I will say there's still a lot of legacy out there that they've got a fixed process and it works like that, and it's very hard to break them out of that mold. If you can't just do a rip and replace, any thoughts about how to work around those kinds of situations?
Yeah, you gotta take it in somewhat in bits and sizes more than anything. If you're going, it's obviously we could interface to a lot, right? Legacy type of environments are interfaceable. The challenges that we face with legacy environments is the environment itself. As solid as they are, it's not, they've been coded and over-coded over so many years that finding the right trace to link up a new system will be challenging, no doubt about it. Sometimes even an upgrade from one version to another, we're going through this with one customer that's on AS400, is not necessarily, and that's great, it's primarily a new system that you're putting in place, even though it's on the ERP side. But there is, it's unfortunately in today's world, there's no magic formula. Sometimes to rip and replace is more efficient than to try to fix what's been working for the last 25 years. So
And just a quick comment, you know, technology that's hard to work with, sometimes some of the best ideas piggyback off of technology. You know, there's an example that I'm thinking of where we've seen this for the past 25 years, where somebody sometimes picks the wrong item. In newer technology, we put a little notice on the screen to say you're about to pick the wrong product, or this is a complicated product to pick. Make sure you pick the cup and the lid, just warnings of that nature. People for the past 25 years have been sticking little notes above that location saying, you know, please be careful when you pick this. We've made mistakes in the past. So there are process improvements that can be done outside of technology. So if you've got a very difficult technology to work with, some great ideas can still be processed. You know, the idea of using color-coded bins to drive, priority level picks versus less priority versus air versus ground. All of those different ideas are run outside of the technology sphere. So there's always still improvement that can be done. Sometimes it's more efficient with technology, or it often is, but there's still great ideas to be had outside of technology.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions to go through. The first one is involving your team for agents of change. Any tips for involving supervisors and managers for being positive agents for change? I think we've talked a lot about that, but anything concrete that you'd suggest?
Yeah, I think this definitely goes back to the points made earlier about, you know, just encouraging that communication, you know, amongst not only your supervisors, but all the way down to the teammates, sales, you know, include the entire organization. You know, make sure that it's clear that everyone understands what the goal is and communicate that throughout. You know, it's definitely going to give that kind of positive spin to things, you know, right from the get-go. If people look at it and they're kind of like, oh, this doesn't apply to me, or how can I possibly make this, you know, how can I make changes that are going to impact the organization as a whole? You know, they're going to get that negative feeling right off the bat. So I think it's really important to kind of set what those goals and those expectations are, and then make sure that they're aware that you do have a place in this role, you know, that you can create and drive this change forward.
Okay, last question, because we've only got 5 minutes left here. How would you start creating ideas to increase space efficiency in an area in the warehouse? What process or model do you recommend to do that? Probably, I'll throw that one to you, Nick.
Yeah, it's every business is different. What is, you know, your biggest pain point, and what could be your competitive advantage? So, in quite a few of our customers, they don't have enough receiving space. Hence, you know, if they don't have enough receiving space, they can't put away their products fast enough and then pick it and ship it. So usually that's where we always start. Ideally, you know, the best scenario is that we could build a building from scratch, and then, you know, we could pretty much do whatever we want with it and build the best of breed in terms of best practices. But that's not the case. The majority of the times they're retrofits, and we got to work within the confines of the four walls and the ceiling and the columns that we have. But we sit down usually with the customer and determine, you know, is receiving, shipping, cross-docking critical, staging, if you have a counter or a branch attached to the distribution center. So we look at various aspects, and from there we decipher and ways in optimizing the space as much as possible. And again, I'm just going to go back and say, without volumetric data, volumetric data allows us to slot the warehouse efficiently, choose the right racking, choose the right material handling equipment for the operation to be efficient. So those are also small investments that could be done throughout the course of a journey that don't cost millions and millions of dollars, you know, over a short period of time. So.
Right. Okay, guys. Well, I would like to thank our panelists for today. You see them on the screen now. You can reach out to any of these people, I imagine on LinkedIn or directly at Tecsys or through the Eclipse organization. If you want to continue this conversation or you have other questions for us, we'd be happy to. Thank you very much for your time today, and we all hope that you got something to take you forwards on your journey towards continuous improvement in the warehouse, because we all agree that really is where is the path to gold. So I'm Bill Denby, and I'd like to say thank you very much from our panelists and for the Eclipse team for allowing us to present this. It's been a pleasure, and thanks a lot, and we'll say see you next time.